Chaperyin. Chapter 1. The Return. Snow fell slowly and gently from the sky, as if the winter air itself had decided to blanket the small town in a pristine white cover, creating an atmosphere of coziness and magic. Alex, having returned to his hometown after years of service in a bustling city, felt a warmth in his heart as childhood memories surfaced, despite an indescribable feeling of being a stranger in familiar places. The narrow streets, adorned with Christmas decorations, were lined with bright lights, and the shop windows shimmered like stars in the night sky, offering passers-by all sorts of goods and treats traditionally associated with the holiday season. Alex paused for a moment to admire the majestic Christmas tree in the town square, where the locals bustled about cheerfully. Their laughter and joy could be heard from afar, yet a faint note of unease lingered in the air, one that no one seemed willing to acknowledge. Lena, his longtime friend and a talented journalist, had re-entered his life with the same energy and enthusiasm that had always defined her. She was brimming with ideas and determined to uncover the secrets hidden beneath the town's tranquil surface. "Something here is definitely not right," she said with a concerned expression as they strolled through the square illuminated by the bright lights of garlands. Her intuition had always been sharper than most, and Alex knew it was worth paying attention to, especially now when the air felt charged with an unusual tension. "Have you heard about the disappearances? People are going missing, and no one can explain why." Alex frowned, realizing that this information might be more than mere rumors. He was not one to believe in urban legends, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that something truly strange and menacing was at play in their cozy town. "It might just be a coincidence," he replied, trying to dismiss the growing unease, though deep down he suspected the matter was more serious than he wanted to admit. The next day, they decided to visit the local archive to delve deeper into the mystery. Alex sifted through old newspapers with growing interest, filling his mind with new facts, while Lena immersed herself in legends about paranormal phenomena that had supposedly influenced people's lives. She stumbled upon a poignant yet eerie story about an ancient spirit said to guard Christmas festivities and punish those who failed to value family bonds and traditions. This forgotten tale seemed to be known only to the town's eldest residents. "Listen, Alex," she said with genuine curiosity, looking at him with a spark in her eyes. "Maybe we should talk to some of the locals. They might know more than we can imagine." Thus began their investigation, full of intriguing discoveries and unexpected twists. With each new fact they unearthed, Alex grew increasingly concerned, realizing that something dark was lurking in their quiet town. Lena, on the other hand, was determined to uncover the truth, and her enthusiasm only fueled his growing fears. By evening, as they walked home, the sky had become overcast with thick clouds, and a cold wind howled through the streets as if foretelling something dreadful. "I feel like we're on the verge of something big," Lena said, and Alex couldn't help but agree. They both knew that in this town, where tradition and the magic of Christmas reigned supreme, something dark and dangerous was hiding, and they had to uncover it before it was too late. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Past. The next morning, Alex awoke to the faint sound of tapping on his window. Frost had adorned the glass with delicate patterns that seemed to form intricate shapes, as though an unseen hand was trying to convey a hidden message. Squinting, he moved closer to identify the source of the noise. But there was nothing outside except the lifeless, snow-covered landscape bathed in pale morning light. Lena was already waiting for him downstairs, eagerly flipping through an old book they had found the day before in the archives. "Look, Alex," she said, pointing to a yellowed page. "It says here that the spirit known as the Winter Keeper appears during the coldest days of the year and takes away those who break the Christmas oath." "The Christmas oath?" Alex repeated, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Yes. It's a kind of promise to uphold family values, traditions, and the spirit of the holiday. If someone betrays that, the spirit comes for them." Lena's expression was a mix of excitement and unease. "It's said that those he takes never return." Alex smirked, though a twinge of unease stirred within him. "It's just a legend. You've said it yourself. People love making up stories to explain what they don't understand. Maybe, Lena nodded, though her gaze remained cautious. But how do you explain the disappearances? They started long before we returned here. After breakfast, they headed to the home of old Agatha, a local woman renowned for her deep knowledge of the town's traditions and history. Agatha's house stood on the edge of the forest, nestled among snow-laden fir trees. The elderly woman greeted them at the door with a warm smile, but her eyes seemed to hold secrets beyond words. "Ah, you've come for stories?" she said, ushering them into her cozy living room. "More young people are interested in the old ways these days. That's good. Sometimes the past helps us understand the present." Agatha shared tales of winter rituals that had once been strictly observed in the town. One of them involved lighting candles in the main square and singing an ancient hymn to appease the winter keeper. This ritual had been abandoned long ago, dismissed as a meaningless tradition. "But some things shouldn't be forgotten," Agatha said softly, her voice lowering. "If they are, the consequences can be dire. The keeper does not forgive neglect." Alex noticed Lena jotting notes in her notebook. As they said their goodbyes and stepped back into the cold air, she murmured, "We need to find out who in town might have broken these traditions. It could be connected to the disappearances." They began questioning the townspeople. Most shrugged off their inquiries or dismissed them, but a few shared unsettling accounts. Some claimed to have seen shadows gliding through the streets at night. Others spoke of whispers emanating from the forest, calling out their names. These stories were too strange to be mere fabrications. By evening, Alex and Lena found themselves back in the town square. The Christmas tree still glittered with garlands, but its light felt less comforting now. Lena pulled out a flashlight, scanning their surroundings before suggesting, "We need to go into the forest. I'm sure the answers are there." Alex hesitated but reluctantly agreed. The forest was unnervingly silent. The snow muffled their footsteps, and the stillness was so profound it felt as though even the trees were holding their breath. Eventually, they came upon an old abandoned house. According to rumors, it had once belonged to a family that vanished during one of the harshest winters. "Are you sure we should go inside?" Alex asked, feeling the cold seep through his clothing. "If we want to understand what's happening, then yes," Lena replied, pushing open the creaky door. Inside, the house was cloaked in dust and cobwebs, but old photographs still hung on the walls. One depicted a family smiling beside a Christmas tree. Lena picked it up, only to notice that black liquid seemed to seep from the father's eyes in the image. "What is this?" she whispered, just as a loud crack echoed above them, as though something heavy had fallen onto the roof. Alex rushed to the door, but it slammed shut on its own, trapping them in darkness. The silence was broken by a soft, piercing whisper emanating from all around. "You shouldn't have come back." Chapter 3. Lena clutched Alex's arm, her fingers icy with fear. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a low humming that seemed to emanate from the house itself. The walls around them appeared to shift, and the air took on a strange metallic taste. "What's happening?" Alex whispered, glancing around. Lena didn't answer. She quickly retrieved the flashlight she had dropped and illuminated the room. The beam of light revealed strange symbols etched into the walls. Symbols that hadn't been there before. They glowed faintly with a sinister blue hue, as if alive. "Alex, this isn't just a house. This place." Lena trailed off as a cold gust of air rushed past them, carrying the whispers with it. "This place what?" Alex asked, reaching for the door again, but it was freezing to the touch, as if encased in ice. He felt panic tightening in his chest. "A ritual," Lena finally said, her voice trembling. "A ritual was performed here to summon something." The whisper suddenly escalated into a deafening, piercing scream. The flashlight flickered, and for a moment, they both thought they saw a tall, dark figure in the corner of the room. Instinctively, Alex grabbed Lena's shoulder, trying to shield her, but the figure had already vanished, leaving behind only an intense chill. "We have to get out, now," Alex said sharply, struggling to keep his composure. "Wait, look." Lena shone the light on the photograph she had been holding earlier. The black liquid no longer oozed from the image, but the family's faces were now grotesquely distorted. Their eyes had turned into hollow, empty voids. "Alex, they're looking at us," Lena's voice wavered. "This is madness," Alex shouted, attempting to open the door again. But something struck it from the other side with such force that it refused to budge, as if whatever was out there didn't want them to leave. Suddenly, the floor beneath them gave way. Alex managed to grab Lena's hand as they both plummeted into darkness. The fall was brief but jarring, leaving them bruised and disoriented. They landed in a basement they hadn't known existed. The space was oddly warm, bathed in a faint red light from an unseen source. In the center stood an altar, covered in a thick layer of frost, surrounded by what appeared to be remnants of a fire. Torn ribbons and melted candle stubs adorned the walls. "This is the place," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. "What place?" Alex asked, still struggling to stand after the fall. "The place where the rituals were performed. They summoned the keeper here. But something went wrong." Before Alex could respond, their attention was drawn to the faint sound of footsteps echoing from deep within the basement. Slow and deliberate, the steps grew louder as if someone, or something, was approaching without haste. "We need to hide," Lena hissed. But there was nowhere to hide, only bare walls and the eerie altar. Alex grabbed her hand and led her toward a narrow door on the far side of the basement. But the door was locked. The footsteps drew closer, and the red light in the basement began to dim, leaving them in near total darkness. Alex heard Lena whispering under her breath, perhaps a prayer. Suddenly, the light flared up again, revealing a figure standing before them. It was tall, cloaked in tattered white fabric that moved like snow in the wind. Its face was concealed by a mask of ice, and from beneath it came the same whispering voice they had heard before. "You came seeking answers," the figure said, its voice cold and sharp like a winter gale. "But knowledge comes at a price." Lena and Alex froze, unsure of what to do. The figure stepped closer, extending a hand from which frost seemed to flow. "You have broken the oath by stepping where you should not have. Now you must choose, atonement or joining." "Alex," Lena whispered, gripping his hand tighter, "we can't agree to this." "What happens if we refuse?" Alex asked, trying to sound confident, though his voice wavered. The figure didn't reply. Instead, it slowly raised its hand, and the altar behind them burst into a bright light. Shadows began to rise from it, forming terrifying shapes. The entire room vibrated with their ear-piercing screams. "The choice is yours," the figure said again, "but time is running out." Chapter 4: The Seal of Eternity. Alex and Lena stood before the enigmatic figure, which seemed to embody the very essence of a winter's night. Its voice, cold and piercing, still echoed in their minds. "The choice is yours." A tense silence filled the room. Lena was the first to break it. "What happens if we choose redemption?" she asked cautiously, her voice trembling slightly. The figure stood still, its icy mask tilting slightly toward her. "Redemption requires a sacrifice," it said, extending a hand toward the altar. The snow-like patterns on its cloak glowed with an eerie blue light. "But not everyone is capable of making it." "What kind of sacrifice?" Alex demanded, his insides churning. He wanted to protect Lena, but each second here felt like a growing threat to both of them. "Something you value above all else," the figure replied. Lena clenched her fists. "It's a trap. We can't play by its rules." "And if we refuse to choose?" Alex glanced at the shadows still writhing around the altar, as though they were alive. "Refusal is also a choice," the keeper replied coldly, its voice growing louder and filling the room. "But then your world will remain forever in the shadows. You are deciding not just your fate, but the fate of all who live here." The creature's words hit home. Alex thought of Agatha's stories, the townsfolk's strange accounts, the disappearances. He couldn't let this darkness consume everyone. "What exactly do we have to do?" he finally asked, trying to sound resolute. The figure lowered its hand, and the light around the altar dimmed. In its place, glowing words appeared in the air. "Offer the strength of your heart, one who is pure of soul, willing to give their light for others." "It's you," Lena said suddenly, looking at Alex. "What?" Alex stared at her in disbelief. "You always think of others, Alex. You save me even when you're scared yourself. It's you it's talking about." "No, I'm not letting you put this on me." Alex grabbed her shoulders. "If anyone's going to do this, We'll find another way, okay? Lena looked into his eyes and he saw a determination that was stronger than fear. She turned to the keeper. I'm ready, she said firmly. Lena, no. Alex lunged for her, but the shadows around the altar rose and separated them. They wouldn't let him near her. The one who chooses must do so willingly, the keeper said, its voice softer now, almost a whisper. Lena stepped toward the altar. Thoughts of her family, her past, and how Alex had always protected her raced through her mind. If someone had to make the sacrifice, it would be her. The altar blazed with brilliant light, and Lena closed her eyes. She felt something warm envelop her, awakening a force deep within. In that moment, her entire life flashed before her, moments of joy, pain, and hope. Are you certain? The keeper's voice whispered in her mind. Yes, Lena replied, her voice steady. Suddenly, the light grew unbearably bright. Alex shouted her name but couldn't reach her. The shadows began to vanish, dissolving into the air, along with the altar itself. When the light subsided, Lena collapsed to the floor, barely able to stand. Alex rushed to her. You're alive. What happened? I don't know, she whispered, staring at her hands. They were cold, but she felt a strange power coursing through her, a force she didn't recognize. The keeper still stood before them, but now its silhouette was less solid, almost translucent. You have restored the oath. The balance will be preserved, until it is broken again. With those words, the figure began to dissolve, leaving behind only a swirl of snow. Alex held Lena close. Her body was icy, but she smiled at him despite her weakness. We did it, she said, though deep inside, she felt that something within her had changed forever. As they left the house and returned to the forest, Lena noticed that the snow no longer felt cold to her. On her palm, faint but glowing, was a tiny snowflake, a symbol that she was now bound to the keeper's secret for eternity. Chapter 5. Shards of Silence. Alex and Lena returned to the town, leaving behind the dark forest and the ominous house. The frosty air stung their lungs, but it no longer carried the heaviness that had accompanied them since their arrival. Snow sparkled under the streetlights, and the town appeared as quiet as ever, as though nothing had happened. Lena still felt the warmth of Alex's hand firmly holding hers, as if he feared she might vanish. But something felt strange. Since leaving the house, she had sensed something new, something inexplicable within herself. Her fingers no longer felt cold, and her breath left no mist in the frosty air. Alex, I've changed, she finally said as they approached their small home. Changed? What do you mean? He turned to her abruptly, concern written all over his face. Lena raised her hand, showing him her palm. A delicate snowflake still shimmered on her skin, now glowing faintly with a soft blue light. It's a sign. I can feel it. I'm now part of the keeper, she said, her voice trembling, though her eyes burned with resolve. No, Lena, this is all because of the ritual. It's temporary. We'll find a way to fix this, Alex spoke quickly, as if trying to convince not only her, but himself. Lena shook her head. It's not a curse, Alex. It's a choice. I agreed to this. Now I'm part of this land, its vow. As long as I live, the balance will be preserved. But at what cost? You shouldn't have to sacrifice yourself for this. And if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Their conversation was interrupted by a faint noise. Turning around, they saw the townsfolk emerging from their homes, drawn by an unseen force. Slowly, people began to gather at the main square, where a large Christmas tree glimmered brightly. Agatha, Lena whispered, spotting the old woman among the crowd. They moved closer, and Agatha, noticing them, smiled. But her smile was tinged with sadness. You did what needed to be done, she said, looking directly at Lena. You knew, Lena realized. I knew that one day someone would restore the vow. We neglected our traditions for too long, forgot our past. But now it's been set right, Agatha said, bowing to Lena, leaving her flustered. No, please don't, Lena began, but the townspeople started approaching her, nodding gratefully, some even taking her hands in theirs. Alex stepped back, feeling the growing distance between himself and Lena. She looked at him with the same warmth as always, But now there was something new in her eyes, something intangible. The night ended unexpectedly quickly. By morning, the snowfall had stopped, and the sky was clear as glass. The town came alive. Children built snowmen, adults laughed and decorated their homes. The disappearances had ceased, and the whispers no longer haunted the people. But Alex knew that for him and Lena, everything had changed forever. One evening, he found her sitting by the tree in the square, gazing at its twinkling lights. "You could have left, Lena," he said, sitting down beside her. "I could have," she agreed, her gaze never leaving the lights. "But then we just end up back where we started, and I can't let that happen." "And us?" he asked quietly. Lena turned to him and took his hand. "We'll always be us. It's just that now. I'm a little more than just Lena." That night, Alex lay awake for a long time. Time passed, but he increasingly noticed that Lena had changed. She grew colder less often and spent more time alone, as if something beyond his reach was calling to her. A year later, on the coldest night of winter, Alex woke to silence. Her bed was empty and the window was ajar. On the windowsill, he found a delicate snowflake that melted as soon as he touched it. He stepped outside, hoping to find her. But all around was the dark forest, and above the stars shone brightly. Lena was gone, leaving behind only silence and a faint frosty wind whispering her name. And yet every year, on the coldest day of winter, Alex would come to the tree in the square. He felt her presence, barely perceptible, but deeply familiar. She was always there, guarding their little world from the darkness.